Can.
All right. Maybe I'll just sit up. And how about now?
That's much better.
All right.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a long overdue episode of The Fat Minute. Did you guys miss us? Because I missed you. And of course, I missed my wonderful co-host, BVJ.
Hello.
Hi. And of course, I am your host for this evening, Don John. And tonight, we're finally concluding our two-parter, our look at our favorite TV shows. So for the last episode we did of this, we took a look at Blake's top 5 favorite TV shows, and I watched an episode from each of those shows. We talked about it, and since that episode, I have started watching Frasier. I'm like maybe 2 or 3 episodes away from finishing season 1. I'm enjoying the fuck out of that show. So I'm looking forward to the watching the rest of those episodes. Um, but tonight we're getting into my list, and you guys have no idea how long I've been waiting to do this episode. Like I've and Blake, you have no idea how much I've had to restrain myself from just asking you, what did you fucking think of my shows? I wanted to save it for this episode for when we go live. I want my reactions to be authentic and organic. So,
Oh well.
oh, I don't like the sound of that.
Well, well, you won't have to do much waiting now because this should be a pretty short one.
Oh wow, I don't know how to feel about that.
Mm.
Well, let's go ahead and do a deep dive here and jump right into it. So the 5 shows I had you watch Whose Line Is It Anyway, House, The
Mhm.
Simpsons,
Mhm.
Legend of Korra, and The X-Files.
Mhm.
So we'll start off talking about Whose Line Is It Anyway. I mean,
I
there's
I have an order for tonight if that's fine. If that's okay with you.
what?
No, I have an order. Like I have them in an order.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is, what is the order? Like,
Oh yeah. So you said Whose Line, and then I was gonna do House, and then Simpsons, and then Avatar, and then X Files.
yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. Never mind.
All right, stands dead. So first show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I mean, this show very near and dear to me. Um, this show and The Simpsons are probably the most responsible for my particular sense of humor, my brand of comedy, and Whose Line especially really responsible for my sense of comedic timing. I just love Whose Line. Every episode is there. There is not a single bad episode in this whole series, in my opinion. Now, it was difficult for me to choose an episode for you to watch for Whose Line, mainly because the episode I wanted you to watch originally was the episode where Robin Williams was the fourth chair, but for some reason, that episode is not on HBO Max. In fact, there's a few episodes that aren't on HBO Max, which makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Um,
So weird one. I think we talked about streaming shows doing that in the last episode, but
yeah.
long story short, like Drake and Josh is on Hulu,
hmm
but there's like random episodes out of the final season that just aren't there, and I'm like, I don't see how you can afford like I don't know. It'd be one thing if like the show had switched networks or something, but it's like I don't see how you can afford like every other episode in a season, but not the other episodes. That's weird
Right.
to me.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not like it's like I highly doubt it's a situation where they're like culturally insensitive by today's standards. It was fucking Drake and Josh, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's the same goes with this. Like how, like I feel like you should either be able to get the show or not. Like
right.
yeah, it's
Um,
all or nothing.
so since I couldn't have you watch the Robin Williams episode, instead I had you watch season 5, episode 15, an episode that is known by every fan of this show, the Richard Simmons episode.
Hmm.
And I mean, I had you watch this episode just because it doesn't like even before Richard Simmons comes out, it's pretty great, and it really gives you a good sense of like the structure of the show and like what these guys are here to do, and their banter and their dynamic with each other. But I also had you watch this show just because you really get to see the number one rule of improv, which is lean into it, and Colin Mockery does that to the fucking extreme in this episode.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so before when you watched this episode, did you know it was the Richard Simmons episode before he came out, or was there a point where you were like, "Oh, I know what episode this is"?
Yeah, I had figured you would pick the Richard Simmons episode because you had shown me a clip of it before.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I love how before Richard Simmons comes out, the couple games they do before he comes out all involve making fun of him somehow, and they're just
Mhm.
like not even putting two and two together. But then when he comes out, they all realize like, "Oh no, he heard all of that."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you could tell Richard Simmons was like backstage the whole time, like, I'm going to make them all pay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and give it to you. What was your experience and opinion, if any, with this show before watching this episode, and what did you think after watching this episode?
So, let me start with you. Why this episode?
Well, like I said, I feel like this episode, it gives you like probably the most extreme example of the improv rule of yes and, or as I call it, just leaning into it. Um, because you just get to see Colin do that to the extreme. Like Richard Simmons tries to make them as uncomfortable as he fucking can during the whole time he's there, and Colin's just like, whatever, I don't fucking give a damn.
Right.
And then he tries to turn that around into making like especially his buddy Ryan really uncomfortable, but they're still just like, the show must go on. So it's just really interesting and funny to just watch them lean into it and do what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, my impression of the show was not very vast before, I think I had watched like a couple episodes while at Andrew's house with Michael way back in the day, way back in like high school, like ninth, 10th grade. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've always the gist of it and the whole shtick of the show. Um, but it always seemed funny. It just seemed like one of those things where like I never avoided it. I just never got around to watching it.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was just never on at the times when I would just be aimlessly surfing TV.
Hmm.
But I just never got around to watching it. But I actually had a lot of fun with this episode, especially when Richard Simmons finally comes out.
Hmm.
And I mean, Richard Simmons interacting with Colin Mockery, you kind of saw like the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object.
Yeah, who's gonna crack
Um,
first?
yeah, the best moment being the jet ski,
Yeah.
which I think was like the best example of lean into it
Yeah.
because just when Richard Simmons becomes the jet ski, Colin Mockery is like, yeah, you're not gonna like make me like back out of this or get uncomfortable here. So I just felt like it was they were just constantly one upping each other in a very healthy way.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, overall, like it just seemed like a very positive environment. It seemed like everybody gets along. Um, I mean, there's probably like a lot of shows where it's like, yeah, I'm willing to bet like half those people don't even like each other when they're not on stage.
Right.
But I was totally willing to believe that like everybody's buddies here, everybody enjoys one another's company. Um, I mean, like they're, this is probably apples and oranges, but like their like attire, their sense of style or fashion really dates the show because I haven't seen a suit that baggy on someone in a long time. Uh, but yeah, so I mean, this had to have been like what, like the late '90s, early 2000s.
If it was season 5, it was probably like 2002 or so, give or
Yeah,
take.
yeah, yeah. That sounds about right. The era of like big baggy suits and tiny sunglasses.
Right.
Uh, but no, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where like I don't have too much to say other than it was an enjoyable time. Um, I would say because of that, uh, would I be willing to watch more episodes after this episode? And the answer to that would be like absolutely for sure. Like if I were to stop by and you were to turn it on, um, I'd be absolutely down for that. So yeah, I think this was I mean, I imagine the Robin Williams episode was good too, but I
Hmm.
think like this was a very strong pick to sell somebody on this.
And what makes the Robin Williams episode so strong is that because in this episode, Richard Simmons is just a guest. They bring him out for a couple games and that's it.
Yeah,
With the Robin Williams episode, he's the fourth chair. He's a performer, so he's there the entire show from beginning to end. And
right.
obviously with this kind of thing being Robin Williams, like roots, what he originally started as,
Yeah,
you could tell it's very much a case of him getting back to his roots and you know, like it's like put, you never forget how to ride a bike kind of thing. And
yeah.
with it being Robin fucking Williams, it causes everybody else to bring out their A game. Not necessarily to try to be like, oh, we got to show up, Hollywood over here, but just because it's just when improv is done correctly, because improv is all about setting up the next person to make the other person look good, and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they they
No,
all they all have like such synergy with the Robin Williams episode. It's
yeah,
so amazing to watch.
yeah. No, nobody was phoning it in that day.
Right. And I mean,
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
said, I had a hard time choosing a specific Who's Line episode for you to watch just because when I was searching through my memory of it, I'm like, oh man, the episode with when they did this game or the episode when they did this game, and I'm just like, damn, like there's so many different clips I remember, but they're all from different episodes. So I'm like, how can I choose just one? Like I almost cheated and just found like a random YouTube compilation of like the best moments and just was like, watch this. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I ended up settling on this episode, and I am glad to hear that you enjoyed it.
yeah. No, I was. It was. If I didn't have to like basically go to bed right after, I would have probably watched a few more episodes.
Well, hey, it's on HBO. It's on the Hobo, so
The hobo.
the Hobo, and they
Yeah,
all they all kind of dress like hobos.
yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to the next show, House. Um, I started watching House. I think I was like in maybe high school. I started watching it when it was a couple seasons in already, um, and like I immediately fell in love with the show. Like just the characters and their dynamic with each other, and just kind of like the Sherlock Holmes type character against a medical backdrop was just really interesting to me. Um,
Hmm.
like I saw a random episode. I was just surfing through channels, watched a random episode, loved it. Loved it so much that I caught like the rest of the episodes when they were like on in syndication and just like caught up with the series up to where it was at that time and then watched every new episode every week until the series finale, which I'll be the first to tell you I am not a fan of that series finale, but that's neither here nor there. Um,
I mean, are series finales ever good? Like, I feel like more often than not, people just don't like them.
I don't know. That would be another interesting episode because I feel like there are a lot of series finales that just really aren't just not good, but also just kind of like undermine everything else the series did before it.
I feel
but
like a lot of them, they just kind of go out with a whimper.
but then you have series finales that do it right and really make you like be like, damn, I'm really gonna miss the show. Like getting off the rails a little bit here. The series finale, The King of the Hill, is perfect if you've ever seen it.
No, I have not. I have
You should
not.
watch it. Like it's the perfect way to end the show like that. Same with
I think
the
like,
the series finale, The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, was really good too.
yeah, that no, that actually seems to be like one of the very, very few that a lot of people remember fondly.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, I mean, like, but then you have like Dexter,
Yeah,
that like has a notorious season finale.
Game of
Um,
Thrones.
Game of Thrones. I mean, yeah, like shows that like we're like, man, where do we go? Let's just give everybody the middle finger. And
Right.
it's like, woof. Um, I mean, and it's a limited series. It's a mini series, but like the finale to Watchmen was pretty goddamn great. Yeah, it would have been pointless to recommend that one because it would have been like you kind of just have to watch the whole thing to appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah,
But back to House. This was
yeah.
probably the show I had the hardest time picking an episode for you, just because. I mean, I haven't watched the show in quite a while. Like I probably haven't watched it since it ended back in 2012. Uh, but this is the one I was just like, what fucking episode do I pick here? And
Hmm.
I ended up going with season 4, episode 16, Wilson's Heart,
Hmm.
which is the episode where, spoiler for people who haven't seen it, but for fans of the show, you'll know which one I'm talking about. It's the episode where Amber dies.
Hmm.
And I went with that episode because I really wanted to show you how the main character interacts with the world around him.
Hmm.
Like you can already tell just by looking at this dude. This is a very rough around the edges, curmudgeon, cranky guy.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted you to see I'm sure just by knowing that by looking at him, you can kind of get a sense of how he reacts in normal settings. So I wanted to show you how he reacts, in a setting where he's personally invested in the situation, where he's got a
Yeah.
personal bias going on.
Yeah.
But one thing, because I rewatched all these episodes before we did this show tonight, because like I said, it's been a long time since I've watched a lot of these. And one thing I never realized the first time I watched this episode, because I don't know if you know this, but the character of House, the character is notorious for one of the things he's notorious for is having a addiction to Vicodin because of his injured leg. Um,
Hmm.
but he doesn't take a single pill in this entire episode, which I thought was really weird. Um, Something that just really stuck out to me this time when I watched it.
Yeah.
But I chose this
Well,
episode because, again, I wanted you to see how this character reacts to the world around him, especially when he's personally invested in the situation. And also because, in my opinion, this episode kicks off what is, in my opinion, the peak of the entire franchise. Because this was the season 4 finale, and then season 5, like the events that, you know, begin in season 5, 6, and even 7, are kicked off. Like this is kind of the catalyst to a bunch of things that end up creating, in my opinion, the peak of the entire franchise. Um, so I also wanted to show you because this episode really gives us like a look at the softer side of the character. Like I said, you could tell he is a very rough around the edges character. But I wanted to show you that, he's not just this asshole who just walks around and berates people all the time. There's a bit more to him
mhm.
to that. There's some more layers to him.
Right.
So I'll go ahead and give it to you. What was your thoughts and opinions going in and then leaving?
I mean, whew, uh, I think, probably out of all, I mean, of the, I'm trying to like spit it out and I'm having trouble. I was like really impressed by the pacing in this episode. Like it has times to like breathe and
Hmm.
just take a second, take a sigh, and obviously there's parts where he has to like take a snooze, but as he
Right.
says, even when he rests, he's not resting. Or
Right.
he keeps having these like surreal dreams or whatever. He's like, oh Christ, I get more rest when I'm awake. But but like I mean, this whole episode is kind of feels like a racing bus in and of itself.
Hmm.
Um, and so like it was very well paced, and in that respect, I think it was a really good choice. I thought it was very interesting for you to recommend a part two of two.
Hmm.
But I mean, it does one of those previously on House, and
Yeah,
and
like
you kind of filled me in on the first episode,
yeah,
and
I feel like the previously on house bit at the beginning does enough to like key you into like what happened before.
actually, with me watching this without having watched part one, I think that kind of like helped me relate to him having amnesia. Like that kind of became like
Yeah.
kind of like an interesting experience with like, oh, I guess I'm kind of like he really is the eyes of the audience because I don't know what happened in the last episode either. So like in a weird way, it kind of worked out.
All right.
But yeah, like I mean this is I had never seen a single episode of House before
Mm.
this. I had never even seen like a segment of it, where I was like flipping through channels and I watched it and then it came back on and then once it
Which
went to a commercial break I was like, oh, I'll move on. So like this was the first time I had seen like a single minute of this show.
hmm
Which is weird that I had like kind of just not encountered it at all. it was one of those things where it's like I didn't avoid it. I had nothing against it. I wasn't like being a hipster or whatever. Like, oh, like it's too popular. I don't like the people that really like it or whatever. I just, again, it was just one of those things where I never got around to watching any of it.
Hmm.
Um, but this house fellow, he's he's a bit of a master of the clapback.
Yeah.
Um, and but yeah, no, he's kind of like he's kind of like if Sherlock Holmes was just kind of a fucking dick.
I mean, Sherlock Holmes was probably the biggest inspiration for this show.
Medical Sherlock Holmes almost.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, just these little lines he has. They don't even have to be quips, but like just his comebacks or just responses. Like obviously he starts to look suspicious of having had an affair with this woman, and he's just like, I lost 4 hours, not 4 months. And I thought like it's just a little line, but like I thought that was really well said. Um,
It's also
and then the
Hugh Laurie's delivery just
yeah
really adds some like this show really is this show made me fall in love with Hugh Laurie as an actor.
yeah it's definitely this is would be specifically one of those characters where you could not have had him just be played by anybody. Like you
Right.
had to get just the right person
Right.
for that. Um, and then the the actor who plays his best friend Wilson. I'm trying to remember where else I've seen that guy. I've seen him
Dead Poets
somewhere else.
Society.
Okay, that is him.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
he's the
yeah.
guy who the kid who kills himself in Dead Poets Society.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so yeah, he was in that. And then I feel like I haven't seen him since this would have happened. Like I haven't seen him lately. Do you remember seeing him lately at all? Like
I think I saw him
I
at
guess
Walmart last week.
okay, Jesus Christ. Um, but yeah, no, I think it was a very well paced episode. Um, again, like it really gives you like a pardon my pun here, but a crash course in this guy's personality. Just like where I mean, he's like an absolute bitch to Olivia Wilde
Yeah.
in this episode. Like he is just he's not a fan of her,
Which
and he's not afraid to let her know.
well, it's funny
Um,
because you say that because their relationship really like the way their relationship pans out and the arc it has as the show goes on is it's one of the high points of the series.
oh really?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Um, but hold on a second. I'm sorry.
Well, don't be sorry. Just be better. I'm sorry
Um,
I got into character a little bit there.
well, so there's also I mean speaking of like little responses that I liked, there's even a little moment where they're trying to like obviously figure out what's wrong with Amber,
Hmm.
and and Olivia Wilde has just quickly says it could be a number of things or something like that. She's
Yeah.
like it could be anything, and he just goes, oh great, let's explore that. Like it's like whoa, it's like okay, dude, like point taken, but yeah, like go easy on her. Um, and then like whew, I mean the last like what 10 minutes of this episode is it takes a lot out of you. This
Yeah.
is was probably the most emotionally and spiritually draining episode you had on this list. Um and it's obviously like she is going to die and then they all just kind of say goodbye to her. Um
And it does a
this
very
isn't
it gives a very interesting perspective of the trope alas poor Scrappy. I don't know if you're familiar with that trope where basically just a character that nobody likes dies and now suddenly everybody likes that character.
they kind of address that too.
Yeah.
They're like she didn't even like us, and then they go, well, we didn't even really like her, and it's like, well, we like her now.
Yeah.
Like they just kind of like, yeah. I've never heard that term, but I
Yeah.
kind of know what you mean, where it's like where it's time for them to leave and everybody says their goodbye. It's like any other episode, like you didn't like having them around, like,
Yeah.
um, but obviously I have no context there. Like I have no Was Amber a regular from the very beginning of the series, or?
She first came in season three because basically what happened, House had a different team at the beginning of the series, um,
Hmm.
and then like at the end of season two, he fired them all, but they still work in the hospital in different jobs. And then
Oh, okay.
at the beginning of season three, he basically tries to do like the Bachelorette with by picking a new team. He just has like like a fucking auditorium full of people, and he's just like follow me around on cases, and at the end of each one, whoever sucks gets canned, and then once I get down to three, that's my new team, and that's how Cal Penn, Olivia Wilde, and I forget his name, but the actor who plays Dr. Taub, that's how they come in. And
Hmm.
Amber was one of the people who was like trying to compete for a position on his team, but
Mm.
she didn't make it. But then she ended up dating his best friend. So
Oh, there you go. And his best friend was around since the beginning, I take it.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Um, but yeah, I mean, it takes a lot out of you, and it's just I don't know. I just couldn't help but put myself in that bed as her in a way. It's like because I've thought about that often. It's like that would be a very weird experience to be like to know that you are not going to be here anymore
hmm
within the next few hours, and it's like how do you choose the next amount of limited time of existence, at least on this earth or whatever you believe. Like that would be such a weird experience.
right.
And I guess like your brain kind of like tries to calm you, and you go into this like weird, mellowed out, surreal form of shock where like you're not having like an existential panic. But yeah, I obviously the dream is to just go quietly in your sleep in the middle of the night. But I mean, yeah, that would be whew, that would be a very scary situation, though, just to ponder it in real time.
hmm
Um, but yeah, I mean, like, very well acting job, especially from his best friend, as he has to say goodbye to his, the woman he's in love with. Um, you know, the whole line of, we're always going to want more time. And it's like, how are you not angry? It's like, I don't want that to be the last emotion I feel here.
hmm
Um, but yeah, no, it was it was an emotional episode. It was a lot to think on, especially in the end. And once again, watching just this part two without having seen part one, it kind of got to put me in Dr. House's shoes of having amnesia. So that was kind of cool. That was a very unique experience to watch an episode on. So
And I also like another reason I chose this episode is because you could tell at the end of this episode, like Wilson totally blames House, at least to some degree, on this whole thing. And
yeah,
I mean, House even blames himself for it happening.
yeah, yeah,
And I thought it was another reason I chose this episode is because I think we've all had that friend who has some sort of behavior or personality trait that, like, at one point we're just kind of like, oh, it's not necessarily cool, but it's harmless, so whatever, so we just ignore it. But then they finally do something because of it, because of that personality trait. They do something
right,
it's not cute and harmless anymore, and
yeah, yeah,
it's something we've all been through, and and then we have to
yeah,
make a hard decision about what we do about this friend of ours, and
yeah,
that was very much the case here with House. Like he's had these issues this entire series, and now they finally resulted, albeit indirectly, but they resulted in somebody dying. So it's like,
yeah,
what happens now?
yeah. Yeah, it would just be a very situation to be in because, I kind of see how his friend would blame him and how he would blame himself.
hmm
But it's also like, yes, like, had he not gone out drinking, had he not tried to get a ride, like a lot of it was circumstantial in his defense, situational. It's just like, it was all just a matter of chance. Like, yeah, like they were in a bus wreck on the way home, but it's like, what if she randomly wanted to go grocery shopping and got in a bus wreck there? Like, like
Yeah.
it's just how many degrees of separation can you continue to blame yourself on something like that? But it's still a very good setup for what I assume echoes throughout the series, I guess.
Yeah, like I said,
Which may,
this episode is a catalyst for what I feel is the peak of the series. Like seasons 5, 6,
yeah.
and 7 are the top tier of the entire series.
So yeah, I mean, which finally brings me to would I watch more episodes after this one? Um, this episode, and I imagine the series isn't probably the greatest for someone who is medically squeamish like myself. When
It's
he
not that bad.
not that bad.
No,
I mean,
I mean it's not Grey's Anatomy. Come on.
right. Well, I have no idea, but
Well,
I
Grey's
mean, like with
Anatomy
me,
is
like
just bad.
my imagination just gets the best of me. So like, I mean, when they have the needle in his brain and they're trying to do electroshock therapy, I just my mind just kept trying to imagine. I'm like, oh no, like I was cringing pretty hard. And then when he has a seizure and they're like he moved too much to where like it jerked his skull or something, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna barf. But no, I mean, putting that aside, yeah, I would watch more episodes after this one, especially like kind of curious to see like where his friendship with his buddy goes after this. So I would be curious about that. But yeah, no, totally. I would be willing to watch more episodes after this.
Somebody in the chat just said I'm in Blake's same boat, only like 2 episodes at a time.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well then we'll move on to our next show, The Simpsons. I mean,
Oh,
exactly. I think anybody who's watched any episode of this show knows that The Simpsons is my favorite show of all time. I was raised on this show. It taught me better morals than my mother did, in all honesty. Um, so, I mean, I've seen every episode, and I know you've seen a few episodes, and I know we like tried to pick shows that like the other half of us hasn't really seen. Um, but I felt like with a series that's quickly approaching 800 episodes, I was allowed to cheat a little bit. Um,
Jesus God.
especially since you've seen, from what I've gathered, you've seen maybe like a season's worth, if that. Um, so
Oh, yeah, yeah.
with The Simpsons, it was like I had so many episodes to choose from, and originally I was going to choose, I believe it's season 7. This episode is in the Springfield Files, which is a crossover between The Simpsons and the X Files, and I was like, no, I've already shown them that one before, and I'm having you watch the X Files anyway, so so I was like, what episode do I choose? Like, there's so many good ones that would be great to sell this show to someone. So I ended up
Hmm.
having you watch season 5, episode 3, Homer Goes to College.
Yeah.
And I chose this episode because this is actually like the first episode that I have like memory of watching. Like I have vivid memory of being like 3 or 4 years old and watching this episode on TV and loving it. And I go back and watch it now as an adult and I love it even more because like so much of the jokes make much more sense to me. Like just the title, Homer Goes to College, is like a punchline in and of itself. Um,
Yeah.
because everybody knows that knows who Homer Simpson is and what he's about.
Right.
And like the episode just immediately starts off fucking goofy. It's goofy the entire time, and it ends on a completely goofy note. Like the Homer Goes to College is like probably one of the best episodes in terms of like if you need to teach somebody like this is what the theme and the dynamic and the mentality of The Simpsons is. You go with this episode. Um,
Yeah.
and I just really enjoyed when you watched it, just your play-by-play of the episode, because I just imagined you giggling every time you were typing something to me. Um,
Yeah.
so I'll go ahead and give it to you. What'd you think of the episode, and what'd you think of the show?
It is a great it is a great presentation, and I guess you know um culmination, embodiment. I don't know the word, but it is a great like appetizer, a sampler of TV's favorite dumb motherfucker. I mean, it's just America's favorite fat fucking moron. uh, yeah, I mean, it's just you really get like just not a good episode for Homer, like emotionally, like his, just how he is, like I guess, like spiritually or emotionally, but like how he is mentally.
Yeah.
And the line that says it all is, "Oh no, I'm gonna get fired for being dangerously unqualified for my job." like, like that's just not that like he agrees with the logic there, but just that that's just such a bummer of an inconvenience. Um,
I
like
don't know
yeah,
how
he
I
makes
don't know how he caused a meltdown. There wasn't any nuclear material on the truck.
yeah. But it's just I am jealous because I don't think even my mom would trust me to safeguard the bumblebee. Um, um, but yeah, so anyway, like a lot of people are like, hold on, you're skipping straight to the inside jokes. So in this episode, Homer is revealed for not being a very bright man, which whew, I'll never forget where I was when I heard the news.
I was in the
And
shower.
because of that, he has to go back to college and attend classes for the very thing that he does. And because I guess the last several years of his life, he has been doing a, you know, uh, dangerously evolved version of the saying "fake it till you make it." Um, and, and yeah, I mean, it's just a giant giggle of an episode. I mean, sure, I found like his like beef with the dean to eventually reach places of like kind of mean spiritedness towards the dean himself. Like how I don't know, like doesn't the episode just basically end with him being crippled for the rest of his life? Like like I mean like yikes, like Christ, piss on the dude's ashes while you're at it. But anyway, um no, my favorite moment is is the dean just going for a stroll and stopping going, sounds like a pig fainting. I was just like, oh right, that very specific noise that you can hear in the distance. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those episodes where like there's not too much to say other than like I enjoyed it. I laughed probably at least once during every scene. I think yeah, I just think it's a good pitch for um, here's basically a good summary of the main character of the series, and um, other than that, like, would I be willing to watch more after this episode? Yeah, I mean, granted, I'm not trying to like put down this episode we're doing right here, but I was already willing to watch more episodes, but no, it definitely like helped in me like being fine with that idea.
We gotta sit down and watch the episode with David Hyde Pierce together sometime.
Oh yeah, where he's Sideshow Bob's brother.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's literally just a crossover with Frasier.
That sounds perfect.
It's one of my favorite episodes. It's definitely my favorite Sideshow Bob episode. Um, but
Yeah.
my favorite joke from this episode is when he just fucking hops out of the sewer. Just the beam at my bottom. Now my bottom's big.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so juvenile, but it's still funny.
Well,
Like,
it's like right after they're just like, oh, Mr. Simpson can't be here today. He's in South America helping like underprivileged children, and just all of a sudden the sewer grate's just shaking, and he just fucking pops out.
yeah,
Oh fuck.
I love it.
All right, well let's move on to the next show, Legend of Korra. So Avatar: The Last Airbender is definitely one of my favorite shows of all time, but unfortunately, you've seen every single episode. I know your thoughts on the show. I know you love it. We watched it together, but I still wanted to like kind of include it on this list in some way, so I decided to kind of cheat a little bit and have you watch an episode from the sequel series, which I know you haven't watched. Um,
Hmm.
and I had you watch season 3, episode 13, Venom of the Red Lotus. And
Hmm.
I feel like Legend of Korra in general is kind of underrated. Like I feel like it didn't get enough love from a lot of the fan base, and I feel like it still
Hmm.
doesn't. I enjoyed Legend of Korra, and I enjoyed the character of Korra, and I chose this specific episode, even though like I feel like this episode doesn't necessarily give you a whole lot of
No.
Korra's character, but I chose this episode because I wanted to show that, because with a lot of TV shows, when they have like a revival or a sequel series or some sort of thing like that, they just don't hit the mark, and it just kind of gets over the top, or even sometimes undermines what came before it. But I wanted to
Hmm.
show you with this episode, the people who created this universe managed to up the stakes and up the ante in a way that's very organic. It doesn't feel over the top. It doesn't feel like it's, going too far or anything like that. It still feels very natural and very fitting with this universe. And I also just wanted to kind of give you a taste of like how they like really show the passage of time, because this series takes place 70 years after the last Airbender. And with the last Airbender, it's very cut and dry. Like the Fire Nation's the bad guy, everybody else is the good guy for the most part. There's some gray areas there, but for the most part, that's the case. But with Legend of Korra, like it's nothing but gray areas. I mean, the villains in this episode come from all four bending types. We have an Airbender, a Firebender, a Waterbender, and an Earthbender on this team of bad guys. And then we have Firebender and Earthbender brother who is on Team Avatar. Like everybody can be good, everybody can be bad in this series, and I think it really reflects the passage of time and how this franchise has evolved past that original series. Um, so that being said, what were your thoughts on the series going in? What did you think of the episode?
So I loved The Last Airbender. Um, all three seasons. It's a great trilogy of seasons.
Hmm.
But yeah, like, and I was, when we had finished, and ever since then, and I guess someone could ask, well, why haven't you gotten around to it? I don't know, man. It's just who I am as a person. Like, if you're listening to this episode and it's like, wow, this Blake guy doesn't get around to watching a lot of stuff. Well, yep, that's, it sure is. Um, but I was already game for picking up The Legend of Korra eventually, sooner or later. Emphasis on the later, I guess. But yeah, I was already sold on giving The Legend of Korra a chance. As far as this episode, um, I'm gonna bum you out really bad right now.
Hmm.
This was without a doubt the hardest episode for me to watch on this list.
Really?
I yes, um, I have almost nothing to say because I'm not sure what I watched. I didn't understand anything going on. I didn't know who was who, what was what, where they even were. Um, I guess if I had to compare this, I would say this is like if I had only seen the Star Wars prequels and then you had me watch the last half hour of The Last Jedi and asked me, so please dissect the last half hour of The Last Jedi. Like, um, yeah, I
I mean,
don't,
I,
I,
I, I will admit there is a lot of context that is needed for this episode. And, I unfortunately realized that in hindsight. Um, but like I said, my main goal is to show you how they managed to up the stakes. Because when you have any sort of like series or franchise that goes on for a while, eventually it gets to a point to where it's like, how are they going to keep escalating things? Like, at what point is it going to jump the shark? And I want to show that they managed to keep things, like I said, organic and natural and fitting for the tone of this universe.
I absolutely believe that those things are true. I just have no idea if they were. Like I saw like up in the stakes, up in the ante, there was a lot of boom boom, and there was a lot of swishy swishy, and there was a lot of
Well, dude, they're
there was
they're
a lot of
legit. Like, it's not just like, hey, we're gonna kill the Avatar. It's like, no, we're going to like actually like legitimately permanently end the Avatar because we're gonna kill her in the Avatar state so the cycle doesn't continue. Like they're literally terrorists, anarchists. Like that's what I mean by upping the stakes.
right. Um, yeah,
Hello?
I yes, no, 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 I'm here. Are you there?
Okay. Yeah, you keep going like really quiet. Like your AirPods suck, man.
Oh man. Um, yeah, I'll just have to do the laptop. I just don't really have access to the office right now.
Uh,
Um, yeah. Let me just see if I could just hold it like a regular phone because I hear you fine.
yeah, there's moments where you go really quiet.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do this old school like a phone. Um, so yeah, I don't have any reason to believe that this was a a bad episode in general. I just don't think it was a very good episode for what we're doing right here.
Hmm.
Um, I just feel like I just had no context. I heard J.K. Simmons' voice, so I have that going for me. Other than that, I don't really know what was going on. They were trying to poison her, and they yes. um, I'm really reaching for something right now, I'm trying to grasp it. But yeah, I let me just skip to the end. Would I be willing to watch more after this episode? Yes. And I was already willing to watch more, but I'm sure that if I were to watch, and I just feel like that this is just one of those shows where you can't really just pick out an episode. Like you really have to watch it from the very beginning in
Hmm.
order to
Yeah.
really like understand the journey, the road, because that's what Avatar is all about. It's about a journey. It's about the path they're taking. So yeah, I I believe it's a good show. I just don't know if this episode was compatible with what we're doing tonight.
And I think that's fair. Like I said, this is an episode that requires a lot of context. Um, and I really do recommend you go and watch the whole series, or at the very least, watch season three from beginning to end, because season three, in my opinion, is the best season of the show, and it's fucking awesome.
Good, cool, cool. No, no, I believe you.
All right, well, we'll move on to our last show then, the X Files.
Hmm.
So I remember being a kid and always seeing like commercials and different stuff for the X Files, but I never got to really watch an episode of it growing up, even
Hmm.
though as a kid I thought it looked cool. I mean, it had a lot of stuff that I was into, like the paranormal, the supernatural, had a kind of crime noir mixed with sci-fi going on with it. Um, so it had a lot of stuff I was into, but I just never got around to actually watching any of it. Um, and finally, like maybe 2019, I finally sat down and watched. I started in 2019 and ended in the middle of the pandemic. Watched every episode of the X Files on Hulu, including both movies.
Hmm.
Don't watch I Want to Believe. That's hot garbage. Um, it's bad. Uh,
I'm just absolutely tickled. I don't know if it was the week before or the week after, but they really believe that I Want to Believe had a shot against the Dark Knight in theaters.
dude, I think it came out the same weekend as The Dark Knight.
Yeah, yeah, and it was just
which
like,
which
what?
which I guess playing devil's advocate, you'd be like, it's the X Files. It was a super popular show. People will go see it just because of the brand recognition. But man, if I worked on that movie, I'd have to be like completely honest, be like, man, ain't nobody watching this shit.
No, you had to have known that like obviously like Batman as an IP already existed, but like the Dark Knight was like the hot new sequel. Like they should have known like, hey guys, we I don't think we're gonna be number one this weekend.
or any
we
weekend.
yeah, it's like, hey guys, I think we should have come out in January.
Or never. That would have been okay too.
Christ, if I worked on that movie, I wouldn't have even bought a ticket instead of the Dark Knight.
But the show overall is good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It very quickly became a guilty pleasure,
Hmm.
especially with like the structure of the show where there's basically two types of episodes of the X Files. There's what they call the monster of the week, which is just kind of like a random, like isolated event that the two main characters, Mulder and Scully, go and investigate. And then there's an episode. The other type of episode is one that deals with like the overarching mythology of the series, involving like the government and conspiracy theories and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this episode's kind of like a weird in between. I had you watch season 4, episode 7, Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. And I had you watch this episode despite the
Wait,
fact.
that's the episode you wanted me to watch?
Yeah?
I'm just fucking with you. Go
Oh,
ahead.
god damn you. Oh man, I watched I Want to Believe.
Man, I watched the one with Geraldo.
Oh man, fuck Geraldo.
Oh,
But
okay.
even though this episode doesn't really feature the main characters at all,
Nope. Which I'll get to that.
but I chose this episode despite that because I feel like even just if I were to just show you a picture of the main characters, you would probably be able to guess to some degree what their dynamic is like. Um, it's you got a man and a woman. So that means that sometimes there's some sexual and romantic tension going on. Although I will say with the X-Files, they don't lean into it too much, like to where it kind of gets like, are they going to do it or not? Like, it doesn't do that too much with the X-Files, thankfully. But
I feel like fans really hype that up more than the show itself.
they did, but it's still kind of there. But it's done in like a much more like understated kind of way.
Yeah.
But if I were to just show you a picture of these main characters and tell you like the guy is the one who believes in the conspiracy theories and the woman is the one who isn't, you can kind of get an idea of what they're going to be like working together.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to show you an episode that kind of, because I feel like a show, especially like a show like this where there is a villain, a main villain, the show and the heroes are only as good as, their villain is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show you an episode that really dove into the mind of the main villain, essentially, of the show, the cigarette smoking man.
Mm-hmm.
And just, what kind of shit that these two main characters are up against during this entire series.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is involved in some really deep, dark shit
Mm-hmm.
that we see in this episode. So
Yeah.
I wanted to give you an episode that gave you like a really good villain, and my hope was that it would make you go fuck and just like be like just kind of go like, how do they go against this guy?
Yeah.
And also I just feel like season 4, that which is the season this episode is from, I feel like season 4 is probably the best season of the show overall.
Mm-hmm.
5 and 6 are still good, but season 7 is where it starts to decline, and like by the end it's
Please end.
yeah, especially that final season. But that's a discussion for a different day. So
Right.
yeah, I'll go ahead and give it to you. What were your thoughts of the X-Files before this episode, and what did you think of the episode?
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record tonight, but beforehand, I was not against the X-Files. I just never got around to it. And I know that I'm just starting to sound like the most boring man ever, but
That's not why
like,
you sound boring.
Anyway, yeah, I know. I sound boring because oh shit, I thought I had something, but I don't. Anyway, so yes, the X-Files is a big deal, especially in 90s pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And,
it was everywhere.
It was everywhere, and like it's a big deal, and like I'm gonna try to cringe, I'm gonna try not to cringe when I say this sentence, but it was a huge big deal in like geek culture and nerd culture and whatnot, and just fandoms, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean it was a very popular show.
It was kind of the Star Trek of the '90s in that regard.
Yeah, or or it was kind of like it was kind of like Twin Peaks for dudes that wanted something a little bit more mainstream and less avant-garde.
It was Twin Peaks for people who weren't ready to take a nap.
And but yeah, no, I never had a. I mean, I always thought the I Want to Believe movie looked lame, and like even before it came out, I had gotten wind of reviews where like there isn't even anything supernatural in it. So like the whole movie
Nope.
is just a giant tease, and I'm like, wow, like I hope Christian Bale fucking buries your ass.
Oh, he did.
um, Christian Bale and Heath Ledger. Let's be fair here. It was
Yeah.
But anyway, um, power team there. But anyway. So yeah, I was always open to, I guess, watching the X Files at some point. It was just a matter of like being in the mood for it. I guess like
I
when
just
am I
love
gonna?
I just love what you said to me when I'm not brave enough to watch this before bed.
Yeah. Like I watched this episode like in the middle of the day while my daughter was taking a nap. Like I don't want to. I can't. No, the sun has to be out for me to watch a show like this. Um, but that's just also because like I hallucinate really bad throughout the night. But I'm not even joking there. um, so anyway, this and it's I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but I kind of have to. Like, it's kind of hard to compare like a drama thriller to a comedy show, or especially an animated comedy show. Like, it's kind of weird to compare the an X Files episode to a Simpsons episode, but and especially a Whose Line Is It Anyway episode. But I would say that out of all the um episodes you had me watch on this list, this was probably the one I was like the most into. Um, I really liked this episode. You got to know um, the 20th century's greatest motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like he is just in this episode you get to see the smoking man is basically what stupid people think Hillary Clinton is. Like am I dare you to argue with me? Am I wrong? Like, don't even try to argue with me. Um, yes, the smoking man is what morons think the Clintons are. Um, so yeah, and which is it's funny because I don't know if you've seen this meme, but like the smoking man looks like
Pete
what Pete
Buttigieg?
Buttigieg will look like when
Yeah.
he's old. Like he
Yeah.
looks like an
Yeah.
elderly Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think that kind of ruined the actor they got for him when he's young. Like I saw him and I'm like, nah, man, they should have just got Pete Buttigieg for this episode.
Well,
Even though he would have been like a
yeah, he would have been
teenager.
like 12.
Yeah, he would have been like 12. But
Which,
anyway,
fun fact, if I can interject, the actor they got to play the young version of the cigarette smoking man comes back next season as his illegitimate son.
ooh, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. So yeah, like you get to see a guy he has dipped his toes in just about every muddy water he could.
Yeah. Anytime shit
He
hit the fan, he was there.
he was there. It was his fault. You know how yesterday morning you ate that bowl of cereal that was like really stale. That was his fault too.
Yep.
Um, just like that's what it all comes down to. Everything is this guy's fault, and he has to live with it. And it's kind of like, is he sorry? Is he kind of remorseful, resentful, apologetic? I don't know. One scene I have to bring out is like he basically wants to, and I want to make sure I didn't misinterpret this scene, and I'm sorry if that makes me sound dumb, but is he trying to like basically send out his memoirs in piecemeal to a pulp magazine? Is that what was going on there?
It's more like he wants to write the next great American novel, and he's basically using his actual experiences as like like he's basically using that as the basis for his novel. And
So that's kind of what I was getting at. Like all that stuff he was trying to write was kind of based on his own
right,
experiences.
because he's like he's like it's so insane nobody's gonna believe it's real. So
Yeah. Um. And also, like, in a great line, he says is like he has gone out of his way to make sure no president is even aware he exists.
yeah,
But yeah, so he tries to get his work published, and the magazine just basically screws him over.
Yeah.
And they basically are like, oh, we don't deal with artistic liberty or whatever. Like we take ownership and stuff. You let us handle it. And then they totally change his ending, and he sits on the bench, and I mean, like, he's pissed. Like, he's
Yeah.
like, somebody totally just, like, um slap the ice cream cone out of this guy's hand, and he's just on that bench, and then there's that old homeless guy sitting down eating stuff that he found out of the trash, and he just starts going on a rant. He's like venting to this homeless man, being like, life is like a box of chocolates just full of a bunch of mint crap. Sometimes you get a peanut butter cup or a Toblerone, but otherwise, and it's like he just keeps going on this monologue,
It's a heavy fucking monologue.
and he's upset. But honestly, like, not to downplay it, it was a good job on his part. I just kept waiting for the homeless man to just rip a huge fart. Like, I don't know why.
Because he was homeless.
Or I was just waiting for the homeless guy to be like, man, will you shut the fuck up? But anyway, like, the assassination of JFK, it was him. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., it was him.
It's implied that it's implied he also assassinated Robert Kennedy.
Yeah, yeah, and
like, I think they did a great job with how they wrote him into so many different conspiracy theories throughout, like, the last 50 years.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Like,
think
I like the scene near the end when he's talking to, like, I guess his subordinates, and he reveals that, like, he reveals that the miracle on ice was actually his doing, and he's just like, payback's a bitch, Ivan.
Yeah. Well, just like, and like, these guys that he's sitting down with, I guess they're like his lieutenants or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
these guys basically run the world, it looks like. Like, the one guy's like, oh yeah, I'm working on my Oscar nominations right now, and it's like, geez, God, like, you pull the strings on everything.
Yeah, it's like, what do
And
you? It's like, hey, what about the Czechoslovakian Civil War? It's like, America couldn't care less. What about the Oscar nominations? I couldn't care less.
yeah, yeah, like, these guys, like, have all this power, and
Well, it also it makes a great contrast because they have all this power, but they're still very fucking vain because, like, you have this guy who is probably the most powerful person in the world who's done all this shit, but he's still like, hey, the fucking Bills never win a Super Bowl as long as I'm alive.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just that they are able to make those decisions. They are able to make those calls. Um, I thought it was a nice touch that, like the JFK flashback was in color, but the Martin Luther King Jr. flashback was in black and white because it was a black and white issue. Like, that was a very interesting touch. I mean, there he is with J. Edgar Hoover,
Yeah.
that fat prick.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's just, I really dug this episode, and an interesting thing, like, Mulder and Scully, other than, like, Scully, like, you seeing, like, a flashback to her job interview, I guess it was. Mulder and Scully are not in this episode, really, which I don't have a problem with. I don't dock any points for that. That's not what I have a problem for. I just think you kind of owe me an apology, because I'm just playing here, but because, like that was, like, something you pointed out about the Psych episode I gave you, where, like, Gus and Sean don't really do much, and then the new girl, like Jessica Day, the main character of the series, isn't there at all. Like, this kind of did the same thing, but I won't get into penny bickering. I think it works for this episode. I didn't have a problem with that, even though I suggested episodes that kind of sort of did the same thing. But yeah, no, I thought that was, like, really cool. So, would I be willing to watch more episodes after this episode? Hell yeah. Like, I think that this was a good way to, like, grab me, pull me in. I guess I'll always wonder, like, would I have appreciated this episode more if I had already, like, known or seen them, like, encounter the smoking man beforehand, like, You kind of get his like origin story prequel.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean,
If
like,
anything, I feel like since you've seen this episode first, if you go back and start watching the series from the beginning, I feel like every time you see them interact with him, you're gonna be like, oh fuck, what's he gonna do to them? Because
yeah,
you're gonna know what he can do to them.
yeah, yeah, and and I guess like I was, I mean, I guess it's like my impression of the show was just really off because this whole time I thought, because I'd known that like there was a antagonistic character known as the Smoking Man amongst the fan base or whatever.
Hmm.
I thought he himself was supernatural, like he was like this mysterious like entity that would show up, but it's like no, like
He's just
he's
a
just
dude.
like, yeah, no, he is what he is what stupid people think George Soros is. Like it's like I could go on and on and on. Like it's that. And but yeah, no, like I mean, I guess I'm asking for a spoiler here, so anybody listening, tough shit, but like does the X-Files do they does the Smoking Man at least have like a satisfactory like ending in the series, or is it kind of like they just kind of like drop the ball on him?
It depends on where you stop watching. If you stop watching where the series originally ended on TV, not really. Uh, but if you watch the revival seasons, I think the way they the ending he has in the revival seasons is a bit better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Huh, man. So there's no, well, you know what? I'm just going to stick with my answer. Yeah, I'll be willing to pick up the show up at some point in the future. So yeah, no, I like, this was probably my favorite episode. And it's like, and I knew where it was going. Like when it was like when they sat him down there like in the army office or whatever, and they're like,
Hmm.
we have a target for you. He's 46 years old.
Yeah,
He's married. He has 2 kids. He's a former Navy, and I'm like, oh shit! Like
yeah,
I was like, oh no!
yeah.
Like um, but yeah, no,
And
it just
the way they write him into setting up uh, Lee Harvey Oswald, like
yeah,
it's just very well written.
yeah. No, it was very well written. Like it was, but that's cool though. Like and I feel like this episode is risky in a way because it's like, would you want to ruin the mystery around this character?
Hmm.
But then it was also like, I don't know, like
Well, they kind of got to have their cake and eat it too in that regard because I don't know if you picked up on this, but it's implied that none of this may be the facts of his story.
yeah,
Like all of it
yeah,
might be true. Like how much of it is true? All of it, none of it, some of it. We don't
yeah,
know for sure, but regardless of what the answer is, this is a dangerous motherfucker.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, good pick.
What were your thoughts when they killed the alien?
Um, I was like, I was like, they couldn't just take it off life support. Like he has to like go all gangster shit on it. Like
I
I
mean,
was just,
you got to make sure. Double tap.
yeah. But yeah, no, that was messed up. Like it's like Christ, dude. Like now you're gonna have Martians have beef with us. It's like I'm just tired of this guy like just screwing everything up. Oh man, the Bills do not win a Super Bowl as long as I'm alive.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised. I did not know how you were gonna react to this episode. Um, and I thought again pleasantly surprised. I didn't think you were gonna enjoy House that much at all.
No, I mean, yeah, it's just other than like me being like kind of medically squeamish, like, ooh,
Yeah.
ow, like he messed up his skull, like, but no, I thought that was a good pick. My thing is just like, I, I mean, it is what it is now, but you should have just waited for me to just watch Legend of Korra from the beginning.
Yeah,
Um,
like I said, hindsight is definitely 2020. I definitely I didn't pick a good first episode for that show, but I understand why it didn't work.
yeah, um, but yeah, I very much look forward to when Emma can watch The Last Airbender. I guess here in the next like I don't know, probably when she's like, 7, 8, something like that. But but yeah, no, yeah,
Well, I gotta say, I'm overall, I'm pretty pleasantly surprised over how you reacted to my list for the most part.
yeah, yeah. I was just, um, I I kind of almost want to have like a sequel to this where I pick like 5 more episodes that maybe would have been better than the ones I originally picked,
A do-over.
or just other shows. Um, like I don't know. I don't know if I would really. Well, it seems like it seems like New Girl is already dead on arrival with you, but looking back, like I don't know if you could really like just yank one episode from New Girl, and have that be like this is the episode. So the only one I needed to work was Frasier, and it sounded like it did work. So that
Yeah,
was the only one I needed to succeed on. Um, and then Watchmen, like no, like you should totally just take it back to square one on Watchmen. It's only 9 episodes, but it's it's so good.
it's
It's so
only
good.
it's only 9 episodes.
Yeah, it's better than like what other guys say. It's like, oh please, bro, yeah, the first season sucks, but it's only 100 episodes. You gotta watch it. It's just like no.
It's only 9 episodes. Same energy as my ex. It's only 2 drinks.
Woof. On that note,
Yeah, I went there.
on that note, I think it's time for me to go to bed.
Yeah, well, that was our show tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. So be sure to, if you tune in late, miss this episode, we'll be on all the social medias and all the fun stuff tomorrow. We'll be on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Be sure to follow us on all the social medias at Fat Minute Radio. And for my co-host BVJ, my name is Don John. It was good to be back. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Fuck you.